together in common cause. More unites us than divides us. That is often said. Now is the moment to make that real. By uniting behind shared values, shared standards of behaviour and shared political norms, and unite against the rise of the far right. We must all step up. And as First Minister, I will do exactly that. My role begins by bringing people together. So I want to set out details of an initiative that will begin by bringing representatives from civic society, from our churches, our trade unions, from our charities together with the leaders of Scotland's parliamentary parties. This gathering, to be held at the end of April, 1 year before the next Scottish election, is a chance to work together for decency, democracy and respect.
What like? So, ordinarily, I was not going to make a sort of response video to Slippery Swinney's bullshit from the other day. However, the more that I listen to it, because believe it or not, I've listened to his speech a few times, and the more that I listen to it, the more it pisses me off. But let's just focus on one thing at a time, shall we? First and foremost, the concept of democracy. Right, and I do try to keep my political bias out of the equation when it comes to the conversation of democracy, because if you were to ask for my honest opinion, I just don't think that democracy even really exists. Point in case being when the likes of Slippery Swinney speaks on the matter. Let's just look no further than some of this sort of political bullshit that goes on behind the scenes. For example, Sustainable Development Goals, signed in 2015 by Nicola Sturgeon, okay? Is that democracy? Did the people get a say on the matter? No, they fucking did not. But however, here we are. What about this, for example? Scotland becomes the first country in the world to embed LGBT education into the school curriculum. Did we get a say in the matter? No, we fucking did not. What about this? Well-being economy, right? Making the transition to a well-being economy is a top priority for the Scottish Government. Emphasis on, and bear in mind this is the Scottish Government's own website, okay? Right? A top priority for the Scottish Government, not the people, no, the government, right? Bear in mind, this is a government, time after time, that continuously got voted in. Well, depends on how you look at it, in fairness, because, you know, more people vote for parties that were against the concept of independence, in contrast to people that voted for parties that wanted independence. But regardless, they got in talking about independence, right? And lo and behold, you didn't get your independence. But what you did get was, oh, well, this is our top priority. Democracy, bro, right? Or, for example, another one, children's rights enshrined in law. The UNCRC, another United Nations agenda. Or climate change. We are transitioning, again, Scottish Government's own website, we are transitioning to a net zero emissions Scotland for the benefit of our environment, our people, and our prosperity. We also need to adapt and build resilience to the impacts of climate change alongside our actions to reduce emissions. Scotland's ambitious climate change legislation sets a target date for net zero emissions of all greenhouse gases by 2045. Our contribution to climate change will end definitely within one generation. Is that democracy? Who voted for that? And even if you want to say, well, actually, blah, 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 it doesn't really matter, does it? Because every single party in a Scottish context, and in fact a UK-wide context, and even furthermore, geopolitically speaking, every single country, they are all singing from the same hymn sheet. Is that fucking democracy? I don't think it is, right? I don't think it is. However,
but we must do more. It is time to come together to draw a line in the sand, to set out who we are and what we believe in. because a politics of fear is a politics of despair. It is a
You know, don't get me wrong. Like, there's a lot of people that struggle to conduct themselves on a panel or in front of an audience when they're doing a speech. Okay, I look back at my days in school, for example, where I very much struggled to do my talks in English, which was sort of one of the things you needed to do in order to pass your fucking exams, etc. However, okay, it's no secret that a lot of politicians, if not all politicians, by and large, have civil servants that write their scripts for them. Okay, so I can't really say one way or the other whether or not John Swinney, slippery fucking Swinney, wrote that speech himself that he is punting out in this particular clip. Regardless, let's sort of digress from that and point to what's glaringly obvious here, and that is the fucking contradictions. Okay, they speak about democracy. He speaks about democracy. Democracy, this alleged fucking concept that so many people sadly still buy into, right? And he wants to create the summit next month in April. People from churches, all the political leaders will be invited to the summit to speak about democracy and what they can do to combat the far right. That in and of itself kind of calls into question the legitimacy of democracy, surely. However, what is far right? What's the politics of fear? And this is what I find fundamentally egregious about people like John Swinney, and just in general, politicians, because they rubber stamp policy after policy. They just oversee the never-ending downward trajectory of our country and our well-being and our people. Sorry, you know, poverty on the rise, homelessness on the rise, suicide on the rise, alcoholism on the rise, drug deaths on the rise, etc., etc. Right? They just rubber stamp it all, they oversee it all, and then if anybody at all comes out and speaks truth to matter, truth to power, as the old expression goes, oh, it's far right. That's far right. It's populism. You know, we need fucking summits. You know, they all band together when it suits them. It's remarkable. It really is fucking remarkable how how Scottish democracy, quote unquote, works. You know, a politics of fear. What does that mean? What does that mean, Jonathan? What does that mean? No elaboration, of course. I will play some other segments of the press conference that he was part of the other day. But regardless, what does that mean? A politics of fear. What does that mean? What does it mean? It's scapegoating, because these people have failed our country. These people have failed the people. These people have failed every pledge that they fucking made in order to get elected in the first place. Via democracy. And then when people call them out, when people call into question the status quo, it's far right, it's populism, and we need to do things in order to ensure that the far right don't get into power. The far right's conversation cannot be included in our conversation. These people are just the epitome of puppetry. Honestly, however,
in other political parties, of course there are, but there is an overwhelming underpinning of common ground about the values that we hold dear, about our politics and our society. So I want to give the leadership to bring people in Scotland together, not just in a parliamentary sense, but in a civic sense, to make our presence felt in protecting the values of our country. And then Lindsay.
Thank you, First Minister. Are you suggesting that the tens of thousands of Scottish people who voted for Reform UK in the general election and may be considering voting for Reform UK in the next Scottish election could be characterised as being far right? And secondly, just to follow up on the aid question, the cut to the aid budget, are you concerned that other areas of public spending could be squeezed to pay for that increase in defence spending, as was suggested could be the case by the IFS?
On your first point, Lindsay, I said in my comments that I accept and understand that people are angry. I don't in any way try to say that, that there isn't anger in our society. I think what worries me is that some of the response to that anger is to find attractiveness in the politics of Farage and the far right.
That's what I'm on about regarding cop-outs. They always seem to concede, acknowledge that there's problems. We understand that people are angry, right? But yet, alternatives and or solutions and or suggestions to try and rectify the problems that these people claim they understand and empathize with people in relation to acknowledging said problems. Oh, no. We know there's problems, but, you know, don't think outside the box. And don't get it twisted, by the way. I do acknowledge that I've for the first time ever since my channel's inception, I've managed to get over 3,000 subscribers, which is pretty fucking remarkable. However, don't get it twisted. I'm not a Reform supporter at all. I think Nigel Farage is a prick. Same way I think they're all pricks, regardless of that fact, right? Nigel Farage is not far right. The Reform Party are not far right. The same way that the fucking Brexit Party was not far right. There is nothing far right, air quote unquote, about any of the aforementioned. But, however, point is though, that these people, they all do it. We know that there's problems, but don't think outside the box. You know? They just all seem to come together, circle the wagons, so to speak. John Slippery fucking Swinney sits there and talks about democracy, a politics of fear, etc., etc. It's not a politics of fear, is it? And he understands that people are angry. Why are they angry? Why are they angry, Jonathan? You know what I mean? The country is going to shit, but it's fine. Just keep voting, Guy. Keep voting for John. Keep voting for the status quo. It's a cop-out, It's a total cop-out. We know we need to do more. And we're going to make things better in time. But don't you dare think outside that box. Honest to fuck. Democracy. A fear. Politics of fear. It's just... What's frustrating above all else is that so many people buy into this mantra. They think that voting, by and large, is going to make a fucking difference in the first place. But more importantly, a lot of people would have listened to this speech. I was a bit late to the party in this regard, admittedly. I mean, I would never have known that Jonathan had conducted this press conference if it wasn't for the debate night Soy Jackery. However, point being, though, that a lot of people would have taken away from that semblance of reassurance. You know, John's on the case. The SNP are on the case. The Labour Party are on the case, etc., etc. No. They all sing from the same hymn sheet, and they all seem to say the same things, which is, to be honest, pretty fucking patronizing. We know, we acknowledge, we empathize that there's problems within the country. We empathize with you. We understand. We know that there's problems within your community and or your society and or your nation. And we're going to make things better in time. But don't you dare think outside the box. Don't you dare look elsewhere, because we're going to fix things. And if you do decide to step outside box, deviate away from the status quo, then you're going to end up in the territory of what could be deemed far right. What is far right at this point? What is far right at this point? You know, a lot of people in Scotland did vote for reform. The same principle applied years back in the European Union referendum. Over 1 million Scottish people voted to leave the EU. Where was their voice? Where was their voice? They were just lambasted, harangued, if not ignored. But when they were addressed, they were always classified as racist, etc., etc. You know? Food for thought, as they say.
Thank you, First Minister. You said people have lived through tough times and there's less money. In Dumfries and Galloway Council tomorrow, they're expected to raise council tax by up to 9%. The borders have already gone up by 10%. Do you accept that's adding pressure to people and, you know, making them angry as well? And just on the defence increases, do you agree ultimately with the Prime Minister's decision to raise defence spending? And are you worried about security given the geopolitical situation at the moment?
On your first point, Matty, on the council tax, the government, I'm obviously concerned by significant council tax increases. I responded to a question from one of your colleagues during the course of the last few weeks where I said that, I think it was Alistair Grant actually, where I said that I thought single-digit council tax increases were what we should anticipate or expect. So obviously, you know, if they're higher than that, then I'm concerned about those increases. The government has done its bit. Local government asked us for a real terms increase in the core local government settlement, and we gave that. We've increased local authority funding by £1 billion. But I do acknowledge that there are real challenges in the delivery of public services. I've had to respond to that by the investment we're making in a variety of public services, whether that's the health service or in relation to the funding for local government or other public services. So there are challenges because of inflation and other factors. One of the issues which I think is fueling the council tax increases is the implications of employers' national insurance contribution increases. And I think if you look at the kind of calculation of the impact of that, I think it would be reasonable to say that probably 3 to 4% of council tax increases are a product of the employer's national insurance contribution increase.
It really is remarkable. Bear in mind, this is the same SNP, the same political party that promised to scrap council tax way back in the fucking day. Regardless of that fact, though, it's more that Jonathan's so understanding. You know, people are angry, but he understands. He empathizes. You know, he sympathizes. People are angry. What are they doing about it? You know, they highlight the anger, air quote unquote anger. They highlight discontent. And that's it. That's fucking it. And they wonder why so many people are disillusioned. They wonder, they question why so many people are looking for alternatives. But for so many people, unfortunately, all it takes is for the likes of this low IQ fucking flip-flop John Athen to address your anger, to highlight your anger, to point out your anger. And that's the end of the matter. Council tax rises, housing price rises, car insurance rises. Everything is on the fucking rise. Inflation, etc., etc., etc. But it's fine because John acknowledges that you haven't got a fucking pot to piss in. John acknowledges these facts. John acknowledges your financial insecurities. All of these puppet politicians acknowledge your financial insecurities. But don't you dare deviate away from the status quo, because in doing so, you'd be a goose-stepping far-right Nazi bigot. I mean, fuck off. It's so patronizing. It really is patronizing, to be honest. This country is going to shit. Every single facet of our society is going to shit. But it's fine, because Jonathan acknowledges your problems and he empathizes. Fuck off, man. Honestly.
From BBC Network, David.
Thank you, First Minister. On your first general point in your speech about the threat of the far right, just for anyone who perhaps might be attracted by the message of reform in Scotland, could you spell out to them what exactly you think makes this party far right? And secondly, is the SNP traditionally has been a party that doesn't champion the idea of spending more on our military, spending more on defence. What is it about the current situation Europe faces that has led you to, as leader of the SNP, be saying it's time to spend more on defence?
I think there's actually a link between the 2 points that you've put to me, David. One is the fact, and I think it's inherent in the nature of the threat that we face to our security. There is a very live and active threat to our security from the aggression of Russia. And I think Farage is, an accomplice to the Russian agenda, an apologist for the Russian agenda. So to anybody who in this country who thinks that Farage represents a means of protecting this country from the external threats that we face, I would say have a good close look at what Farage has been connected with and what his MPs are saying about the Russian threat and their trivialization of the Russian threat. So that is why I come to the conclusions that I come to, that we face a very real threat, that if we don't get it right by protecting Ukraine, by protecting the territorial integrity and independence and freedom of Ukraine, then I think we will rue the day. So that's why we have to take that position, and that's why I would say to people in Scotland, that's one of the reasons I would say to people in Scotland who might be attracted by the simplicity of the Farage message, that they should look very, very closely at the small print of what that involves. And the other thing I would say is that it is crystal clear. Farage has been for years leading the argument which has been hostile to migration. And I think that it's based on a fundamentally racist view of the world. I reject that. I think migration is an advantage for Scotland. We have a reducing working age population. We need to attract more working age people to come to live and to work and to contribute in our country. And that's an economic necessity for us, and the Farages would essentially rail against that and undertake significant damage to our society if they were able to prevail. So
And there it is. Jonathan acknowledges your anger. Jonathan empathizes. Jonathan Slippery fucking Swinney sympathizes. He understands that there's anger. This politics of fear, right? But don't you dare deviate from the point. And then we come to the concept of migration. And if you have a problem with that, you're far right. What is far right? And the fact that they continuously refer to Nigel Farage and the Reform Party as far right, that's a pretty fucking low bar. At this point, what constitutes the concept of far right in the sort of political conversation at present in 2025? It's anybody or any political party that disagrees with open borders and or immigration in and of itself. It's people that disagree with the idea of transgender ideology and or gender theory. It's people that disagree with the climate change initiatives, etc., etc., etc. As far right, fascist, and you're racist, and you're a bigot. If you dare deviate away from the point. Scottish nationalism, eh? Anywho, I think I'm done.